Yeah, I'll do a brief introduction of who eCommerce is. eCommerce is an e-commerce platform built for manufacturers and distributors, and we serve the HVAC industry and party members as well as many others. And I'll let my colleague Justin with the better hair talk about him.
So nice to be here. First of all, back with Hardy. I haven't been to a Hardy event or a webinar in quite a while, so it's great to be back with you all. The B2B Commerce Association helps digital leaders with a number of things, but mainly provide them with the tools that help them do their job easier inside their organization, just like e-commerce does for them. And what that really means is we have training that trains new people and helps onboard them into this world of e-commerce. A lot of times people may understand e-commerce, but don't understand the B2B side. Sometimes they're an internal hire and they understand the B2B side, but they don't understand the e-commerce side. So we have training and tools and resources and really a community to help up level and upskill the entire organization when it comes to digital. And I know that's going to be something we're talking about today, Aaron, but it's so important. Communication, up leveling, upskilling, learning how to do that is so critical, probably more critical than it's ever been. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about that as well.
Sounds perfect. So much like the last one of these that we did, the format is going to be very fireside chat between Justin and myself. And as Brandon said at the beginning, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box at the bottom. We had a lot of questions last time we did one of these. And they were pretty much all over the place. It was like a mix, I feel like, of like business stakeholders trying to understand the technology and technology people trying to understand how to make the case to the business side. So kind of what you said, Justin, it's the two worlds that have to come together to pull off the strategy. Well, I'll start by asking you a question, and then
Sure.
ping pong. We can play ping pong, verbal ping pong. I know that a lot of HVAC companies are moving towards digital transformation because we have these conversations all the time. I know you have these conversations all the time. From your perspective, what is pushing this? What's instigating this drive to digital transformation? Is it what are you, is it customer demand? Is it competitive pressure? Is it something technologically that's motivating it? What are you seeing out there?
I've been talking about e-commerce to manufacturers and distributors for over 20 years now. I think when I started talking about it, it was hey, come join me on this journey together, right? It was, hey, I think e-commerce is cool. I think e-commerce is going to be beneficial to your organization. And this is how you get into it. And that's how I started. And really, my first 5 years of doing this, maybe 10 years, was spent in that kind of trying to bring people along. I think that's shifted and moved over the last couple years. Certainly COVID drove this, but also just some generational shifts have driven this. That has changed from, hey, join me on something on a journey together to you have to do this if you're going to stay relevant, if you're going to stay a company and as an organization. Your customers are actually demanding it. So we've had a shift in economics of the pandemic, of course, but some of that's a little overplayed. The reality is customer expectations have shifted and they realize how simple it is to purchase online and purchase online, not just in their day-to-day lives, buying shoes, but actually buying for their business, buying for the work. I saw some recent statistics from Gartner that said something like 77% of buyers conduct their own research before speaking with a salesperson now. I think statistics are a little bit overwhelming sometimes. I think, can we just agree that the majority or a lot of people conduct their own research online? I think that we can all agree to that. Another statistic I saw was 67% of buyers' journey is now digital. Their whole journey is digital, from discovery and trying to figure out, okay, what solves my problem, to purchasing, to post-purchase, to owning, to replacing. And only 5% of this is spent with a salesperson. 33% of buyers want a seller-free experience. That's a different number. Okay, 33% of buyers want a seller-free experience. That means it's not that they have a preference. They're saying above a preference, they don't want a person involved in their transaction. And Aaron, it's got to be relevant for you. I don't when I'm doing stuff in my job, especially when I'm trying to get stuff done, the last thing I want to get in and get out. You have to be the same, and so online has
Yep.
to be a primary thing for you, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I could do with fewer LinkedIn DMs trying to spam me, but like, yeah, I would like to.
Try to advertise
I
the
know.
equivalent of their car insurance or car warranty to you.
Right. Yeah.
I
Managed services.
so that those are general buyer preferences, but in the HVAC industry itself, I've participated in quite a bit of research in the past with HVAC, and I saw one too that said around 68% of HVAC businesses have shifted at least some of their sales to online channels. And 42% have invested in creating or enhancing their e-commerce platforms since 2020, just in the last 4 years. So we are seeing a shift. There was another statistic that said that about 75% of companies are going through re-platforming their e-commerce because they want to serve their customers in a more efficient experience. I don't think it's anymore, Aaron, a should we do this, or certainly for myself, I'm not trying to coax people along. I'm saying do this for survival. And it shouldn't be done just for survival, Aaron. It should be done for a competitive advantage. Like there's a part of digital that allows you to establish a competitive advantage if you do digital the right way. And I know we'll talk quite a bit about what some of those things will be. There's another shift that's happened at the last Hardy meeting that I spoke at, which I think was about 2019, 2018. I spoke about millennials, and that was really my big push for about 10 years was, hey, millennials are coming, right?
It sounds threatening.
It's threatening. If you have a child that's a millennial, that will definitely be threatening. So right now, I think that generation is now integrated into business, right? I mean, that generation, it's no longer about millennials are coming, millennials are here. In fact, 3/4 of them are making buying decisions or they're influencing buying decisions. 3/4 of buying decisions are influenced by millennials. 50% of actual decisions are actually made by millennials. And I think that makes sense to all of us. We're watching our companies get younger and younger. Here's the scary one. I got 4 daughters. I got a 24, 21, 20, and 19-year-old daughters. They are Gen Z. They've never known a world without the internet. My oldest daughter, she's in the workforce. She is making buying decisions. She's in this world that we talk about. She's following in dad's footsteps. 20% of buying decisions are made by Gen Z. Now, this generation is so different and interesting, right? Because they've never known a world without the internet. My daughter often, we get together once a week for breakfast and coffee, and she always asks me the same question. Almost every week at some point during it, she's like, Dad, I don't understand. Like, why don't companies already have this? Like, this doesn't make sense to my brain. It makes sense to my brain because I've watched an evolution of business go through blue screen and green screen terminals to PCs and now the internet and cloud and now a new AI kind of generation. So I've watched the transition. I know how hard it is, but for her mind is absolutely blown by companies that don't provide a basic level experience in digital. And so Gen Z is here. So I think we have Gen Z, millennials, we have shift because of pandemic, just general buyer expectations, even for people like me that I think are there. I'm curious from your perspective, Aaron. I don't think it's just about Gen Z and millennials. I think it's about older populations too are getting more used to it. What's your perspective on that?
Well, that's a good question. So I'll start by sharing something personal with just you, Justin. I am a millennial, right? I was born in 81, and
Your
that
gray beard does
it's
not say millennial.
it's terrifying, but that's the official cutoff date. And I argue with my daughter about this all the time. Because for her, she's 12, so I'm just a boomer. Everybody old is a boomer.
Sure.
So I guess that is my choice now, is do I want to be Gen X has just vanished completely off the face of the earth. Like it's just boomers and millennials now. So anyway, yes, you're right. Millennials are making purchasing decisions and influencing purchase. And I know because I'm apparently one of them. I'm not comfortable with the term, but I've come to embrace it. So in terms of like older buyers, what's the benefit? Like, what do you get if you're still living in the green screen, blue screen world? I'm still living in the road reps, cases, phone calls, right? The way it's been done. Like, can I just wait for this whole internet thing to sort of like pass by? What's the benefit? I think I've seen a couple of things help where sometimes e-commerce gets considered as like a digital branch or like a separate location of a location or of a company. So I'm going to allocate stock to e-commerce. I'm going to put a P&L target on e-commerce. I'm going to staff e-commerce, and we'll see if this e-commerce thing succeeds or fails. It may succeed, it may fail, but is there benefit? Are there benefit for the other branches? Do the physical branches benefit from the digital branch? Is kind of what you're asking. And I think product data. I mean, the process of getting accurate product data from a supplier to a buyer with all of the hops in between and the incomplete nature of the supplier data usually. So many companies do that in Adobe InDesign, and they make a paper catalog and they mail it out, and there you go. But being able to see accurate product data online is like, even if you're not buying online, if you're not doing e-commerce, I've seen such a positive influence for we'll call them the offline buyers, from being able to, they're still going to pick up the phone and they're going to call Ted. Ted, Ted, they went to high school together. But being able to pull up the phone and see wherever they're on the job site, if they're on a plane, if they're traveling, if they're at home, what is in stock, what is available, what brands are you stocking, pricing, accurate pricing. I mean, that's even even if I'm transacting offline, having information available to you, even if you're not going to buy that way, is tremendously valuable to you, because it allows you to queue up the purchase. It allows you to do the research, as you pointed out. And if you're not present, if you're not showing up online where the buyers are, you're not going to win the business when it does come time to make the purchase. And I think the other one is, if you're a seller, being able to see the buyer's interactions with your brand. So put yourself in the seller's shoes. I'm still doing regular phone calls. I'm still going to job sites or showrooms and things like that to sell. But I want to know, what were they doing when I'm not right in front of them, when my buyer's not staring across the service desk at me. I would love to know how they've been interacting with my brand in the offline time. What have they been clicking on? What have they been looking at? What have they been sending quote requests for? What have other users in their company been doing? That kind of like do the research. If you're a seller, do your research. Like, do your research before you get in to actually make the sale. And I think that benefits as well. And I think the third and last one is really just self-help. Like, there's a lot of call volume in the HVAC industry that is, where's my order? Where's my invoice? Do you have this in stock? Did my payment go through? Like, right, like that kind of stuff. If you can not have to force a phone call for that kind of interaction, that offline seller now has more time in their day to do other things like sell, which usually I hear that they appreciate. So I think there's value, even if you're not like doing full e-commerce, or you've got some sellers doing e-commerce and some not. The benefit of digitizing your catalog and your pricing and all of that does provide quality of life benefits and tangible financial benefits to the rest of the company. It's not just the digital branch.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
So it sounds obvious. I think it sounds like everyone should be doing it, to your daughter's point. Like, why doesn't everybody just go online? Justin,
Well,
I
and
think
it's hard. There's some
is it?
complexity here, right?
Is it?
No, there is. There's a complexity here that, I mean, frankly, there's a complexity here that B2C organizations, retail organizations don't have to deal with. I mean, first of all, you have the products that we are selling in this industry are complex, right? We have complex products that have maybe some danger factors to them if done incorrectly or installed incorrectly. Products that solve a bunch of different solutions from residential to commercial to industrial applications in HVAC, especially. And then we have the distributor has complex customers. So these customers, some of them might be small residential, an installer, or a dealer, but quite a few of them are maybe commercial or larger organizations, maybe institutions themselves, that is the direct customer. And with those companies comes a contract that the buying experience has to reflect that contract, right? So if a company's allowed to buy this or not allowed to buy it, or in this state or not the state, we know how much regulations play across this industry. So you have regulatory contracts, and then you have customer contracts. The customer knows that they can buy this product, but it's at this price, right? It's a negotiated price that's reflected in the contract. So when they go online, they should be able to expect a consistent experience with if I made a phone call to my sales rep or the branch or customer service, right? And so they should expect to get the same price that the rep will give them or the branch will give them should be the same price reflected online, right? The same products that are allowed or not allowed should show up so online as it does. Because if you don't, you're coaching people away from, because it's not a consistent experience, you're coaching people away from actually using these platforms. So there's complexity, and a lot of the complexity manifests itself inside of a system that all of us have, which is our ERP. And what that really means is that our e-commerce efforts have to be integrated with our ERP so that when that buyer goes online and they sign in, we know which company they belong to, right? Which company they work for. We know if they're allowed to buy something. Are they allowed to buy something, or should that order be routed through someone that needs to approve that order? We know that it should protect them against buying things outside of the price range or outside of the scope that they are enabled or allowed to do, just like the ERP has reflected, which means these two systems have to be talking or integrated well together. And that integration is not a simple one, right? Every ERP is different. By the way, there's not a company I've worked with hundreds of distributors by now and dozens of manufacturers. I've never met one of those people that said, I love our ERP.
Oh
Our
God, yeah, I've
ERP
never met.
rocks.
It's not just HVAC. I've never met anybody
No,
ever
and not
who made that statement.
zero.
Like zero people.
That's right. We love our new we hate our new AI tools that are so simple to use, but man, our ERP, I love tabbing through all the fields of that, right? So we have this complex system, also not user-friendly, which often means it's not also sometimes not as technologically current, right? So they don't have the ways of integrating as nicely as new technology does. So it's complex. I think the other you touched on it, Aaron. I think the other complexity that exists here is in product content. If you have, most of you out there represent at least a couple 100,000 SKUs, probably in your ERP or in your product catalog. If not a couple 100,000, then certainly tens of thousands of SKUs that you use for replacements or actual systems that you're installing. Where do you get that product content? Where do you get the description, the attributes, the image? We talked about the complexity of the product and how important it is that even for safety reasons, we've got to make sure this information is correct. We need to make sure people are buying the right product for the right reasons and the right solutions. And to do that, the only representation on this digital shelf versus the physical shelf, this digital shelf, the screen that we're looking at, the only representation we have is the information that's on the screen. That's the content, the data, the description, the attributes, the type of coolant it uses, right? The type of power it needs, the replacement parts, all the different aspects of it. And getting that data is a relatively difficult challenge to actually get that data. And it doesn't become a single project of just getting the data once. That data has to stay up to date, which means that this whole idea of product content has to become not just a project, but a program, meaning someone's got to own it. Someone's got to help improve it every single day. I've said this for years. I think I've said it at Hardy, but there is no such thing, no such thing as good content. There's only content that's improving. It's improving every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, right? And the needs of customers change around content. They didn't need to see these types of attributes. Now they do, because they're trying to fit it into new applications. Internet of Things now is driving, IoT, Internet of Things. That's just, systems being able to transmit data about what's happening. It's now giving, a lot more data. But even with that, to understand what's wrong and to be able to diagnose issues, it takes more and more product content. So it just becomes a complex thing. On the flip side, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, as you were talking, I decided to pull up a product detail page from one of our customers, Diversitech. I was looking at a condensate pump, and I was just counting how many product attributes there are on this page. There's 31 product
31.
attributes, 31 that all are important, right? Max temp, max flow rate, amps, horsepower, all of it, right? There's also pictures, nice pictures. There's product benefits. There's a TDS that you could download, super needed, right? Supplier may or may not give you that. You just kind of like amplifying what you were saying. Like there's an enormous amount of data that goes into this industry, and it's all got to be right.
Well, yeah. So on the distributor side, it's about aggregation. It's about getting that content from all the sources, and the sources often are suppliers or manufacturers. On the manufacturer side, if you're a manufacturer on the phone, manufacturers are saying we want to and need to control our brand at our distributors, right? Like if this is the digital shelf and this is where my products are selling to their customers, we actually want to take ownership of that and control how our brand is represented at those distributors. But both have a common problem, which is how do manufacturers get the data to distributors? How do distributors get the data from manufacturers? And getting the data is just one step. Like, how do you actually bringing into your system, update all the systems that it needs to, right? So it's a level of complexity that is very difficult in our world versus like, someone selling shoes somewhere, which is just it's just an easier way of doing things. Yeah. Aaron, you mentioned Diversitech. I'm curious about other stories, or maybe you can tell that story. Like what's the difference for your customers between success and failure? Like what draws that line?
That's a good question. I mean, having a definition is a really good place to start. There's an awful lot of people who start this journey and they haven't defined success, so therefore it's very difficult to know when you've successed. I was just reading, so we're doing a case study right now with one of our clients. They manufacture and distribute wood panels and flooring. So, not a Hardy member, but some similar challenges, right, in terms of what they're doing. So 900 employees, right? Many branches, many locations, kind of a mix of manufacturing distribution there. 900 employees, and they just went live with eCommerce this year. So I was reading the interview with them, where we're cleaning it up for a case study, and there were only 2 people doing marketing at the entire company out of 900. Right. And I'm just sort of like reading the interview, and it's like, well, we've always said marketing is not our thing. We don't do that. We have our brand and we stand behind it. We don't market and all the rest of it. But the site launched, and they had some sort of like half-hearted e-commerce before. They were doing like 10 orders a year with it. They launched with us this year. The online ordering has increased 15,000% year over year, which is just that is if there are insane numbers, like that is an insane number. And to listen to them talk, they're basically saying this is our flagship on, or this is our brand's flagship on the web, is this site, this brand, everything about the e-commerce experience is not only there to facilitate a transaction, it's there to represent us and to acquire new customers. And now we understand the power of marketing because they're getting so much more traffic than they were getting before. And it's also there to save time. So I'll quote, "We believe that our sales staff can add more value by not placing simple basic orders." What an idea, right? Like those sales, that sales team is now able to go focus on more complex accounts, go do upselling. So they're saving money on the back end by being more efficient. That's a definition of success. Success. We spend less time hand keying orders into our ERP, right? Success. Our buyers can answer questions about their account without having to call the call center. They said, we've never seen a launch this successful. We've never seen an IT project this successful before, because they had buy-in like from the beginning from both their buyers and their sellers. So I think that's one sort of like view of success. Keep an eye. We'll be releasing the case study here pretty soon. I don't identify the company yet until we've got approval, on the final product. But there is one that's on our website now, Dunlop Boots. So they guess what they make?
Dunlops.
That's right. Yes. Yes. Devices for Dunlop disease when your belly Dunlop over your belt.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a dad joke. There's a millennial dad joke. So they went live. So this maybe your question is a little bit about like, how do you do, like, you went through the challenges, like
Right.
how do you get around them? I think they did it with relentless focus. So they have 12 sites. They're global, right? So 12 country specific sites running on WorldCommerce, but they only launched the one at a time. They launched the first one in 4 months, which is a really fast implementation
Pretty tight.
time. That's, would you say? Like,
Yeah, very
I'd say,
tight.
what's the longest implementation you've ever seen? Don't identify the company, but like, I'm just super curious. What's the longest B2B e-commerce implementation you've ever seen?
5 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
5 years and scrapped it at the end.
5 years scrapped in the end, and probably a couple of CTOs like
A lot of lost jobs.
Yeah. So 4 months is crazy good. They said they saved over 300 hours a month in manual labor by just making stock and pricing information available on the web. Like, again, it benefits everybody, whether you're buying online or not. That benefits everyone, including your own team. And there's
Aaron, 90% of the questions that people want to ask online is, do you have it? What's my price? When can I get it? If you can answer those 3 questions, do you have it?
Yep.
What's my price? My price, not the price. What's my price? And when can I get it?
Yep.
Those 3 questions answer 90% of the challenges out there.
That's exactly right. And you answer that. So what they saw on the back end of that was by putting all that out there, their site traffic tripled, but their conversion rate and order value each went up by 10%. So that's really like, that's triple double, right? Like you're converting more people, you're getting more per transaction, and you're driving traffic to the site. So you're making a lot more money, and everybody's happier with the end product because you've made those basic pieces of information available. And I think what made that successful for Dunlop was they had a very clear idea of success. So at the beginning of that project, they knew we want the first site up and running and live. We're not going to try to do big bang and do all 12 at once. And we're not going to have every single system integrated. It's going to be Microsoft Dynamics and WorldCommerce. We're going to get live. We're going to launch it. We're going to test and learn. And then you roll it out over time. It's not one big IT project. I fund it, and then it's done. And I never have to think about technology again. That's not the right way to do it, I don't think.
No, I agree.
So part of that process for them, though, I think was the change management piece, which is where I see a lot of companies honestly really struggle, is not knowing how to go find the right stakeholders internally to get their buy-in, keep everybody updated, build enthusiasm for the project, while also managing the different vendor relationships that you have. That's like super project management on steroids, because you've got to do all the project management stuff, but you need to have the political capital or be aligned to a stakeholder with the political capital to help push it through. So I'm really curious what strategies you found for HVAC companies trying to get that buy-in and get that enthusiasm?
I think it's actually, I mean, first of all, my absolute favorite topic to talk about. If there's one thing, if there's one thing I've talked about more in Hardy than anything else, it's this idea of change management. My favorite thing to do personally, I mean, not my favorite thing to do in life, but my favorite thing to do in business is to help an executive team and a digital team have good conversations. And what does that actually mean? First of all, I saw this analogy, I think it was this morning. If you talk to people that are really good into ham radio, they will use all these acronyms. Like there's hundreds of ham radio acronyms they use. And if you were to listen to a bunch of ham radio people talk to each other, you wouldn't understand a word that they used, right? All kinds of things. I mean, if you talk to a bunch of photographers, they'll tell you about all kinds of words that I don't understand, ISO and all this stuff, right? Legos have their own language. There's a whole community around Legos, whole community around Dungeons and Dragons that say crazy, they do like crazy acronyms to describe what they're doing, right? It actually makes them all belong because they know how to speak the same language. In digital, we do the same thing. In digital, we've developed our own language that nobody understands. And why would they want to unless you like digital? Like, I don't want to understand ham radio language unless I'm really into ham radios, right? So we use all these words and we just expect the rest of the organization to understand what we're saying. And we kind of like it, right? We kind of like the fact that nobody really understands the words, that we get to feel like the smartest person in the room, but it doesn't help the organization. So if you're in digital, start breaking down your words. So things like SEO and product detail page, PDP and PIM, and we have a whole lexicon of acronyms that we love using that really turns off the people around us. They don't know how to communicate with us. They don't understand what we do, let alone know how to communicate with us. Your executive team is asking a simple question. They're saying, I want to be able to have a conversation with this team. I want to be able to hold them accountable. I want to work with them month over month to see how we can improve this digital experience, but it has to be in language that makes sense for us. So there's two kinds of main parts of change management. First is kind of organizational change. And then the second part is actually changing customer behaviors, which is a completely different thing. Changing our own organizational behavior, changing our customers' behavior is two completely different things, two levels of change management. On the company side, you and I we're talking about this, Aaron, a couple of days ago. My daughter, talking about my four daughters, my youngest daughter, she used to work at Chick-fil-A. And she got used to it, Chick-fil-A, saying what phrase at the end of everything does Chick-fil-A employees say, Aaron? My
My
pleasure.
pleasure.
My pleasure. That's
I
right.
had Chick-fil-A for lunch today, by the way, so this is a good time.
Nice. So they say my pleasure. My daughter would come home and it started to get ingrained in her brain. So I would say, thank you, Audrey. And she would say, my pleasure. And then it became a meme in our house about anytime you wanted to sarcastically say, you're welcome, you say my pleasure. And that never meant my pleasure, by the way. It was always
Like bless your
that was the
heart.
meme. That was
It's the
the
bless
meme.
your
That's
heart
right.
of
Bless your
yeah,
heart.
yeah.
So Chick-fil-A, simple two words. I saw an interview with their chief operating officer that talked about how rolling out the CEO of Chick-fil-A actually heard that phrase uttered by a not a Marriott, a Ritz-Carlton employee, that when he said thank you, they said my pleasure. And it just sounded so nice to him. And he wanted to roll out to his company. So he, in the late 90s, he brings back this phrase and tells everybody from stage, hey, we're going to end every interaction with my pleasure instead of you're welcome. And that year, over the next course of the next year, he comes back and says, hey, we're not saying my pleasure. We need to start saying my pleasure. It took Chick-fil-A 7 years to roll out the phrase my pleasure, two words to a very well run organization with a great, kind of history of change. They already roll out new recipes and things like that on a regular basis, yet it took 7 years to roll out 2 words. This stuff takes time. It does. But it is something that needs to happen with repetition. So we need to, if you're the digital team, you need to boil down what you're doing to just a few easy to understand concepts and start repeating them everywhere you go, right? If customer adoption is what you're looking for, then we'll talk a little bit about that. Then focus on customer adoption everywhere you go, talk about it. Internally market this platform. Get your stakeholders in as soon as possible. And if you're an executive on the call here, this stuff doesn't really work without your help and your support. Like, it has to be strategic from the executive team to make it work. The next thing is on top of internal adoption, it really is about getting digital and executives on the same page. Most companies, so the second layer is this communication, but it's also mixed in with customer change. How do you get more customers to use your digital properties? I think that's probably the question that everybody's asking. What you're really asking is, how do I drive more revenue through our digital branch, our e-commerce, our digital platforms, however you call them? How do we drive more revenue? Well, if you ask that question of just how you drive more revenue, your digital team tends to throw a bunch of tactics at it. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this, we're going to do this and this. It's helpful to break that problem down into something that the whole organization can understand. And that is called customer adoption. And there's actually something called the customer adoption framework. It's out there for free. Anybody can look it up. It's a customer adoption framework. And that breaks down the problem of customer adoption into simple to understand stages in a customer journey to understand how do customers go from being a customer to buying everything they have online, or buying most of the stuff they have online. Or maybe your goal is, I want them to buy 50% of what they buy online. How do you do that in a very step-by-step manner? And how do we as an executive team actually understand that? And how does the digital team understand it? How's the digital team going to report on that, on the progress made? And can we actually have good conversations about what's moving the needle along that line? And this is probably, if I have one kind of mantra that I will be beating for the next 18 months, it will be to build a framework. Pick whatever one you want. There's only a couple out there. One is created by myself and our organization, and it's not a charge to it, so I'm not selling anything there. But it's a framework to help everybody kind of get everybody on the same page and understand the customer journey. On top of that, though, I think there's a couple main things, and I think you'll have input into this, Aaron. The reason customers don't use these digital properties or your e-commerce site is for a couple reasons. One is they don't know about it, right? Have you told them? And again, you have to repeat something 7 times for it to really sink in with someone. I certainly have to hear something multiple times before it really starts to sink in and actually get into my body and understand it. They don't know about it. So you have to tell about it. You have to tell your customers about it. And the best way to tell your customers about it is to get your people inside of your organization behind it, have them evangelize and push it and talk about it and be excited about it with the people that they're interacting, your customers that they're interacting with. So they don't know about it. The next reason they might not use it is it's not good, right? Like it's hard, it's bad. It takes more time to do stuff on your website than it does to pick up the phone and call someone or text a guy that I know. Like, nobody's going to use it. If it's a worse experience online, companies are not going to use it. I can guarantee it. And this is something that Aaron and I have talked a lot about, having good search, right? Making sure they can find the right product, making sure that the checkout process, like the ones that Oro has created, is a very simple and intuitive process There are multiple steps along that way. So they don't know about it. It's not good. The next thing is they don't trust it. Why wouldn't someone trust it? They don't
Well,
trust
because
it.
they don't, because it's not good.
Because it's not good. And Aaron, I think there's inconsistency too. I think price is the number one driver of that. If you see a different price or a wrong price, a higher price, a lower price, a different price than what you just bought it at last week, you're not going to trust it, right? It doesn't take hardly any time to break someone's trust, right? And once you break the trust, then it's hard for them to come back and actually believe, oh, is this going to work out well? I don't know. It's going to be good. It's going to be bad. I mean, the great thing about Amazon, not the experience, is that I click a button and the thing shows up. Like I have trust there. Like I know that when I click the buy now button, 2 days later, a day later, or a couple hours later, it shows up. Like that's the level of trust. Click the button, shows up. Like that's what the whole Amazon experience can be consolidated down to those two things. I click the button and it shows up. So they don't trust it. And the last part that I think everybody needs to take into account is that it's not just that they might know about it. It might be a decent experience. They might actually trust it, but they're never going to do it. There's someone that doesn't like technology. They don't like the internet. They don't like websites. Maybe they're older or maybe they're even younger. They just don't like it. And so make sure when you're building your numbers about what's attainable, do your total addressable market for customer adoption. And your total addressable market for customer adoption should only be the customers that will change. There are customers that won't. They like calling Bobby at their local branch. They like texting. They like faxing. I know there's lots of faxing. They still like faxing their stuff, and they're going to continue faxing their stuff until they turn the business over to little Johnny, right? That's going to take over the business. So these are the steps. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think change management, get on the same page, have a language. Digital team don't talk about these acronyms and confuse the heck out of it. Create a language inside of your company that everybody can understand. That's a relatively simple thing to do. You can use a framework, or you can just come up with your own language and then build a very specific customer adoption. Like how are we going to walk our customer through this journey?
I think speaking of generational differences, I think my follow on to that would be do something that a lot of millennials are often uncomfortable with, which is get out and talk to people in the real world. I mean,
Yeah, true.
I think of all the successful projects that I've been a part of, prior to even coming over here at Oro, and in every case, there was some kind of champion who traveled to the branches, traveled to the locations, went to the factory, went to the floor, and talked to people to find out what do you need this to do for digital or e-commerce or whatever. And really, that's anything because it's easy to be an armchair general, sort of
Mm.
like making a plan and not actually talking to people and then being surprised when they don't react well to your Gantt chart, right? It's what you said, I think, but it's just it's the shoe leather strategy. You gotta put on your shoes and go out and talk to the people actually doing the work because that's the only way to get, I think, the knowledge that you need and the buy-in that you need to be successful with the change management piece is talk to them, talk to your customers.
So Aaron, when that's all set up, the customer's live, and we actually have change management in the organization, they've done this successfully. What are the expectations on business operations for those customers that you've seen?
Oh, good question. I think the one thing that gets brought up a lot is the speed of business goes up.
Mm.
Everything moves faster, right? So, um, one of the benefits of the information age that we live in is that it's faster to get information, right? So, to your earlier point, what do you have it in stock? What's my price for it? When can I get it? The expectation that is just like instantaneously available to everybody. It goes from the ERP or whatever the back office system is out to whoever it is that needs to know is there. Information about products. Where's the data sheet? Give me the MSDS. Give me something for that. The phone calls and in-person meetings, the field sales stuff and the shoe leather stuff, it becomes more strategic. So it's less about I'm going to call you I'm picking up the phone to call Bobby. We're picking on Bobby. I don't know who Bob. If you're
Bobby and
Bobby, I'm
Johnny.
sorry. We're
Bobby
Bobby,
and
Johnny. I
Johnny.
had Ted earlier. I don't know. We're doing some generational stereotyping. So, but if I'm used to picking up the phone and talking to Bobby to place an order, my conversation's done when the order's through. Done. Right now, if the orders are taking place in their own channel, the expectation that I have of now when I call Bobby, I'm going to talk about something else that actually is a benefit to my business beyond the very utilitarian, I need stuff. Like that goes up. So everything speeds up because information is more freely available to everybody who needs it. Oh, here's one. So I have seen this. I'd be curious if you've seen this. I've seen this in almost every B2B e-commerce project I've ever done. Average order value goes up like every freaking
Absolutely.
time. Even if traffic doesn't go up and even if conversion rate doesn't go up or there was nothing before, like average order value, average revenue per account, however you ARPO, however you track it, right?
Order
It goes
lines, number of order lines.
Yep. It goes up on when you switch to e-commerce, or like you take the same type of order onto like a phone order versus an e-commerce order. And the e-commerce orders tend to just be bigger over time, and I think it's because so many buyers buy the same 10 products over and over again from their suppliers, and you can get in a rut. And the web is like such a great marketing tool to upsell and cross sell other products and other categories. Like if I'm selling to someone and they're only buying the same, that's all they know me for. They know me, they trust me for those 10 things, but they don't know that I've made 3 acquisitions since I onboarded them as a client. And now we're selling all this other stuff. We've got services, we've got digital, or we've got other lines, sometimes that website can be a really good tool to get people to, oh, I see they also sell this other thing that I need, right? If you implement that right in your e-commerce experience, you will really organically just start booking more revenue, I think, as time goes on. Have you seen that?
Oh no, I absolutely have. I think it's the speed, average order value. I think average order value also is assisted, especially if there's any recommendations in place with people that buy this. I think as I kind of look into the future of e-commerce, one of the things that I'm excited about, and I know we've talked about this, Aaron, many times in the past, as you guys are kind of looking at your roadmap, is the smartest quick order form ever. Like I think we'll have websites that will strip all the stuff away that we see today, and we'll see really smart, fast, quick order forms. The old quick order forms, right? The quick order forms we were using 25 years ago, akin to an ERP. But as you type something in, it'll do things like, hey, it looks like you're trying to solve this type of problem. Are you? If you are, you should probably add these 7 products to your thing too. And by the way, you're probably going to need a wrench if you don't have one. Looks like I can see your inventory. Looks like you're running low on those. You're going to need another 3 of those. I think though that's the direction of this, and I think average order value, certainly tied to recommendations, the current, but I think the future is just incredible with that.
My head of product marketing might be mad at me if I say this. I am the head of product marketing. Never mind. Where you're going to see from us in a couple of weeks a beta announcement around AI ordering, and it is exactly what you just described. So both from the product discovery and recommendations to the conversational interaction with I'm skipping the normal buying process. I'm just having a narrative interaction with the system, or I'm just emailing a PDF and it's like, there's my order, my PO turns into an order. So watch our space at Oro for more announcements in the next couple of weeks on that. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's about efficiency. That's the ultimate goal, right? Get more done with less. That's what we're all trying to do. Yep.
If you're we talked a little bit about customer adoption. If you're interested, if anybody's interested in this topic, we're doing a really deep dive live stream, free. So not selling anything to you, on customer adoption. It's going to be about 90 minutes to 2 hours long, really deep into the weeds about how do you actually drive customer adoption and get current customers to use your website. We're doing that at the B2BEA on Thursday afternoon as well.
In fact, that question just came in. We're getting some questions in now. Justin, can you please communicate where to find the customer adoption framework that you mentioned?
Yes, B2B.org. It's free to sign up. Go join. And on Thursday, 2:00 Eastern, 2 to 4, We're doing a deep dive. It's going to be recorded. We're actually breaking that into its own training course on customer adoption. There'll be about 7-minute lessons that anyone will be able to take as well. It'll be pretty exciting.
That's pretty awesome. So needed. Like, I'm really glad you guys are doing this.
Absolutely.
It's so needed. Let's see. Do we have any more questions coming in? Brandon?
Yeah, Aaron, I've got a couple here that I can toss over to you guys. So the first one is about hiring a new CFO. How can someone help get the executive team support behind a solution like Oro?
Okay, I thought this was going to be they wanted to hire Justin to be their CFO. If you're in the game, I don't know, Justin. I've got thoughts. I bet you do too. What are your thoughts about CFO buy-in?
Yeah, I think in fact, I just wrote a CFO training to CFOs about how to think about digital transformation. And what I said in there was, it's not the digital team's job to do digital transformation. It's every leader's job inside of the organization to lead their own digital transformation. And the digital team can help come behind you and support and optimize and make your strategy better. But as a CFO, your job. So, and not that as a digital team, it's wise to go in and tell your CFO what their new job is. That's probably not recommended. I think the best thing you can do is come up with a language that you and the CFO can talk about the progress, the financial progress, that's cost, that's revenue, associated with that, margins associated with what you're doing in digital. If you can come up with a language to be able to talk about that, and you might just come up with, and but when I say that, by the way, what I really mean is come up with 2 or 3 KPIs that you don't call KPIs because that's using another acronym, right? You call 3 different things that just kind of make sense. It might be revenue, cost, whatever it might be. And you all agree on what that number, what that KPI means. And then you report on it. And then you're able to have conversations about it. You'll be able to say it was this much this last month, and it's this much this month. Well, why did that change? And the CFO is actually able to ask questions that he hasn't been able to ask me, like, why did that number change? Well, the number changed because we did this and this and this last month. Well, that sounded pretty effective. Looks like our return on investment of that was X%. Let's run that again. That's also a way of getting more resources and more budget. Come up with a language to talk about it. The framework is great because it really breaks down 4 actually, very simple KPIs for every team to look at. And by the way, there's giant companies in the world. Some of the largest distributors in the US actually use the framework and these KPIs to actually measure themselves by. So it's not just a couple of numbers that we came up with.
That's super good. I agree and concur with all of that. I think one of the things that I see, one of the mistakes that I see a lot of companies make when it comes to e-commerce is just throwing it at IT. It's an IT project. It's the internet, so it's the web, so it must be an IT project. And IT leaders can often struggle to communicate with CFOs around business objectives and goal setting. For them, it's a world of tasks and compliance and cost management, right? And it's not the same necessarily vocabulary that a business leader needs to hear. So I think if you're in IT, and I come out of the IT world, so like if you're in IT and you're listening to this and you've been handed digital transformation or e-commerce as an initiative, think carefully about how you want to communicate to the non-technically enabled stakeholders, because their input and their support of your projects is critical to its success and in its continued funding. And so somebody's got to be that bridge.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. And no, we're getting close to the end. Were there any other questions that came through?
One last question, Aaron, that is on here in regards to integration. So it says, I've heard horror stories about ERP integration projects. How does Oro approach ERP integration for e-commerce to make it a smoother process?
That's a really good question. So yeah, it can be. I think you were talking about this earlier, Justin, right? Like, ERP, and the e-commerce website is often the front end of the ERP, right?
That's right.
I think if ERPs were customer facing and could build the kinds of experiences that end users wanted, nobody would need an e-commerce platform in B2B. They would just use their ERP for that purpose, and that'd be fine. They just don't. So we have a couple of different general approaches that we recommend to people. One is we have pre-built connectors with a few ERPs on the Oro side that are pre-built code that can be installed. They're a starting place usually because everybody's ERP is a little different. So, but like we have a pre-built connector with like Profit 21, right, which is a pretty common like ERP in the HVAC distribution space, SAP, right, and things like that. So if you have an ERP that there's a pre-built connector for, we recommend start with that. Don't assume that it's going to solve all your problems for you because you probably customized your ERP in some cool way that the connector isn't aware of. But start there. If you're building a point-to-point connection between Oro and an ERP, I usually recommend just building a bespoke connector that does the things that you need to do. And almost all ERP integrations do the same things: inventory and pricing. So the e-commerce system is getting inventory and pricing out of the ERP, right? Availability, lead time, availability to promise, however you're sort of like whatever acronym ATP you're using in your business, and customer financials. So how much credit does this account have? Like, what invoices do they have open? How much can they buy? Can they use a credit card? Like all that kind of stuff. Often some of those controls come out of the ERP, and that's all basically a push from the ERP into the e-commerce system. And what the e-commerce system is pushing back to the ERP is orders. Most modern ERPs have an API built that Oro Commerce can connect to and push and pull information out of. We have an API. That system has an API. Somebody needs to build or buy sort of matching software that takes, this is what I think an order looks like on my system. This is what I think an order looks like on my ERP. We need to match them together, right? I need the fields to say the same thing. So we generally recommend trying to, if there's something that exists, start with that. If there's not, there are vendors out there, iPaaS vendors, companies like Patchworks, Celigo, MuleSoft, and others that help facilitate this kind of system-to-system integration. That can speed up a lot of time. There's a cost incurred with those, but often, especially in larger organizations, if you've got like a BI dashboard that's pulling data out of that, I've got maybe a risk or fraud system that's pulling data out of it, a CRM, you may want to use some kind of like middleware that is specific to your company because you got lots of systems feeding off of that. So if it's simple, maybe look at just a point-to-point ERP project between the two because it's probably simpler and cheaper. Then if you've got a lot of systems, I would recommend have some kind of middleware. That's my thinking. I've got a lot of thoughts also on like how you go about and execute that, but we probably don't have the time to get into the details there. Anything, Justin, that I missed that you would add?
No, that's great.
Cool. Well, it looks like we are right at 2.
You got it, Aaron. Or 3, or depending on where you're at, it might be a different time. So again, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Justin, for sharing this fireside chat with us. To everyone in attendance, the recording will be emailed out. It will also be hosted on Hardy's website. So if you'd like to pass it along or point it to your team members, you can do so. And again, our thanks to Oro eCommerce for today's webinar presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great being here.